Washington, D.C. was buzzing with anticipation that morning. The Senate Committee on Judiciary had called for an open hearing on voting rights, a subject that had long divided lawmakers. The packed chamber was filled with journalists, cameras, and aides scribbling furiously. It wasn't just another political debate, people knew fireworks were expected. Among the witnesses scheduled to testify was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the freshman Democrat from Texas who had quickly risen to prominence with her sharp intellect, no-nonsense style, and unapologetic advocacy for marginalized communities. She had been described by supporters as the voice of the unheard, and by critics as too brash, too young, and too radical. But her fiercest critic that day was none other than Senator Ted Cruz, a seasoned Republican heavyweight, also from Texas. He had already prepared his lines, ready to dismiss her as inexperienced and out of her depth. The chairman gavelled the session to order. Cameras zoomed in as Crockett adjusted her glasses, her eyes calm but unwavering. She had anticipated every attack, every attempt to undermine her. When it was Cruz's turn to speak, he leaned into the microphone with a smug smile. "Congresswoman Crockett," Cruz began, his tone dripping with condescension, "I must admit I'm puzzled. While we're here discussing serious issues that affect the future of this great nation, I see before me someone who seems more concerned with soundbites than substance. Frankly, I think many Americans would agree that you are unqualified to be lecturing us on constitutional law or election integrity." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some Republican aides smirked while Democrats shifted uncomfortably. Cruz continued, clearly enjoying the moment. "You may have been elected to the House, but let's be real, experience matters. Knowledge matters. And you, Congresswoman, seem to lack both. Perhaps it would be better if you left these discussions to people who have actually studied and practiced constitutional law." The insult hung heavy in the air. Cruz folded his arms, confident he had cornered her. But Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. She leaned forward, her voice steady yet commanding. "Senator Cruz," she said, pausing just long enough for the cameras to lock onto her, "you seem very comfortable throwing around the word, unqualified. That's interesting, considering your own record." Murmurs rippled across the room. Cruz shifted slightly in his chair but tried to maintain his smirk. "You call me unqualified?" she pressed, her voice rising just enough to demand attention. "Let's review. I graduated law school, passed the bar, and worked as a civil rights attorney long before I ever ran for office. My career has been dedicated to protecting constitutional rights, not undermining them for political gain." The crowd grew louder. Reporters began scribbling faster. Crockett didn't stop there. She leaned in further, her eyes locked on Cruz like a laser. "You, Senator, tried to overturn a free and fair election. You stood on the Senate floor and spread misinformation that nearly tore this country apart. You want to lecture me about qualifications? I'll tell you what being qualified means. It means standing up for democracy even when it's not politically convenient. It means serving the people, not your own ambition." The chamber erupted in whispers, some audible gasps, even claps that the chairman struggled to silence. Cruz's smug expression faltered, his lips tightening as Crockett pressed on. "You think being older and louder makes you right? No, Senator. It just makes you wrong with more confidence. And I refuse to let you disrespect the people who sent me here by pretending their voices don't matter." The words landed like thunder. Even some Republicans couldn't hide their unease. Crockett finished with a calm but sharp tone. "So next time you want to call someone unqualified, maybe take a long look in the mirror. Because the people of Texas didn't send me here to bow down to arrogance. They sent me here to fight for them. And fight, I will." The chamber exploded, journalists shouting questions, staffers stunned, Cruz visibly rattled. Cameras captured his clenched jaw, his attempt to recover with a forced chuckle. But the damage was done. Jasmine Crockett had turned his attack into a powerful counterpunch that was already trending online before the session even ended. The moment the gavel struck to end the session, the chamber buzzed like a beehive. Reporters rushed out with their recorders, staffers whispered frantically, and social media lit up like fireworks on the 4th of July. Within minutes, hashtags like #Crockett claps back, #unqualified senator, and #Jasmine vs Cruz were trending on Twitter. The clip of her fiery rebuttal was replayed on every major news network, and commentators wasted no time dissecting every second of the exchange. On CNN, the panel replayed Crockett's line, "You think being older and louder makes you right? No, Senator. It just makes you wrong with more confidence." The anchor smiled as the studio burst into laughter. That, the analyst said, was not just a clapback, that was a political masterclass. Senator Cruz walked into that room with arrogance, but Crockett walked out with the respect of millions. Meanwhile, on Fox News, anchors scrambled to spin the narrative. Some dismissed her words as grandstanding, but even there, the panelists couldn't deny Cruz looked shaken. Inside Cruz's private office, the mood was sour. His staff played the clip again on the big screen, the sound of Crockett's words echoing through the room. His aide tried to assure him, "Senator, it'll blow over in a day or two." But Cruz wasn't convinced. He knew the internet had a long memory, and worse, his rivals within the party would use this moment against him. He had built his brand on being combative and quick-witted, but here he had been publicly dismantled by a first-term congresswoman. Crockett, on the other hand, was energized. Back in her office, her phone was flooded with messages of support. Civil rights leaders praised her courage, fellow Democrats applauded her poise, and grassroots organizations started sharing her speech as a rallying cry. Even young people, often disengaged from politics, began making memes celebrating her takedown. One viral TikTok clip remixed her words into a beat. "Older and louder don't make you right. Just makes you wrong with more confidence, alright." It spread like wildfire, turning her moment into a cultural phenomenon. But Crockett wasn't celebrating for vanity. She knew the stakes were higher than a viral moment. Later that evening, during a town hall in Dallas streamed live on Facebook, she addressed her supporters directly. "Today wasn't about me versus Ted Cruz. It was about truth versus arrogance. It was about the people of Texas being told their voices don't matter. Well, let me tell you, they do matter. And I'll never stop fighting to make sure they're heard." The crowd erupted in cheers. Back in Washington, Cruz attempted damage control. He appeared on a conservative talk show, brushing off the incident as political theater. But the host pressed him. "Senator, some are saying you underestimated her. That you picked the wrong fight." Cruz forced a laugh, but his eyes betrayed unease. "Look, she's a rookie. She had her moment. I've been in this business long enough to know these things come and go." Yet even as he spoke, his phone buzzed with new headlines. Crockett outshines. Cruz in Senate hearing. Rookie Congresswoman schools veteran senator. Jasmine Crockett emerges as rising Democratic star. The regret was setting in. He had handed her a national platform on a silver platter. In the weeks that followed, Crockett was invited to late-night shows, where she recounted the exchange with humor and grace. "He called me unqualified," she said with a smile on The Daily Show. "But if standing up for democracy makes me unqualified, then I'll proudly wear that label." The audience roared with applause. Grassroots fundraising for Crockett's initiative skyrocketed. Her inbox overflowed with invitations to speak at universities, rallies, and advocacy events. Meanwhile, Cruz's office struggled to shift the narrative. His approval ratings dipped slightly, and whispers began circulating in political circles. Was Cruz losing his edge? Had he finally met his match? The incident was no longer just a headline, it had become a defining moment. A younger, fearless leader had gone toe-to-toe with one of Washington's most notorious firebrands, and won. And though Cruz would never admit it publicly, he knew deep down he had underestimated Jasmine Crockett. His words, unqualified, had been turned into a weapon against him, a reminder of the day his arrogance backfired spectacularly. Jasmine, on the other hand, kept moving forward. For her, it wasn't about personal victory. It was about proving that truth, courage, and authenticity could cut through even the thickest walls of political arrogance. And as the sun set over Washington, one thing was clear. That single exchange had shifted the balance. Crockett wasn't just a rising star anymore, she was a force to be reckoned with.